A chain reaction has a known result. One needs a better metaphor. This was really a rogue reaction, one with a course no one could foresee, a result no one could foretell. It began with the accidentally successful outcome of the botched assassination of the Austrian Archduke. After the shots at Sarajevo, the reaction then developed its own absurd momentum. Austria sent an ultimatum to Serbia, blamed for the assassins. Russia supported her fellow Slavs in Serbia. Germany, Austria's ally, threatened Russia. Britain and France, Russia's allies, then had to warn Germany. Germany declared war on Russia. And on France, sent an ultimatum to Belgium. Britain declared war on Germany. France declared war on Austria. Britain followed her lead. Austria declared war on Belgium, which Germany had already invaded informally. Montenegro, not exactly a world power, joined the Allies against Austria. The Turks later joined the Central Powers against Russia and her allies. Japan joined the Allies and annexed Germany's possessions in China. The Japanese then, with infinite wisdom, contented themselves with watching. A very good idea to go to war without fighting. Life had been wonderful for the old ruling coalition, the landed aristocrats and the capitalists. They had power, prestige, wealth, and security in all of these. Could anyone think that these privileges would survive the conflict? As we'll see, they didn't think.
Although the rulers had not given any thought to the social consequences of war, the workers had. Their leaders were not so averse to mental effort, and they had thought much about what war meant for the working classes.
That was because the workers had seen themselves as the natural casualties of war, and so seeing themselves, they had thought about their salvation. They would unite across national frontiers for their common protection. So united, they would use their parliamentary power to oppose credits, money for war. Mobilization would be stopped by strikes. If necessary, the weapon of ultimate power would be employed, the general strike. Then all movement of troops would end, all production would stop, all economic life would be suspended. The war makers would be brought to a halt by the massed power of their own workers. It didn't happen. In 1914, the German Social Democrats were the world model for the working class parties. In the hour of danger, said their leader when the day came, "We will not desert our fatherland." They voted in the bloc for the war credits. It was the same in Vienna. With the French socialists, it was also the same. The French government had a comprehensive plan for crushing protest, arrest of strike leaders, mobilization of troublemakers, and to the sorrow of some of its authors, the plan had to be shelved. There was no need. In Britain, there was pressure from the recruiting officers, but no conscription. Instead, men flocked to enlist. The only resistance was from a handful of socialists and pacifists. The most prominent of these was Ramsay MacDonald. His was a stalwart act. Many thought it cured him of such behavior for life. In Russia, the Bolshevik members of the Duma, the Russian parliament, opposed the war. But they were few in number and were soon expelled. And in Russia, the workers didn't matter much anyway. It was the peasants who counted, and when their traditional masters spoke, they still obeyed.
But these events were of particular interest to one notable resident of Poland. That was Vladimir Ilyich Ulyanov, known except to his intimates as Lenin. He was living here in Krakow because that was as close to the Russian border as he was allowed to get. Following an earlier jail sentence and 3 years in Siberia, he had been in exile since the beginning of the century, except for a few months in 1905. But Krakow was near the Russian border, and revolutionaries went back and forth in considerable numbers, many of them to visit Lenin, whose stature as a revolutionary leader was now acknowledged. The movement was illegal, but illegality was a way of life with these gentlemen. Once a member of the Duma, one Mironov, came to see Lenin. Lenin rebuked him for making a clandestine crossing. After all, he had parliamentary immunity. No one could arrest him. Mironov explained that it had never occurred to him that you could do things like this legally. The revolutionaries seeking Lenin could very often find him here at Yama Mikulika, but not in the summer of 1914. Lenin had long believed that imperial rivalry between the great capitalist powers made war inevitable, but no more than anyone else did he think it was imminent in those summer months. So like any good bourgeois, he was up at a resort in the mountains.
He was in Peronin, in the Tatra Mountains, near the Polish ski resort of Zakopane. His house, which still stands, is of gleaming wood. It's a lovely example of the local style. Lenin was 44 that summer. Like Marx and Engels and revolutionaries in general, he was of middle-class origin. His father had been a school teacher and a school superintendent. Revolution ran in the family. Lenin's older brother had been involved in an amateurish plot to assassinate Tsar Alexander III. He had refused to express regret. The Tsar had expressed warm admiration for the boy before having him hanged. Lenin's wife, Krupskaya, has left a classic account of their life. Lenin was fond of the mountains and of music, especially Beethoven's Sonata Pathétique. She told of that summer as war came.
The air was wonderful, and although there were frequent mists and drizzle, the view of the mountains during clear intervals was extremely beautiful. We walked a great deal and visited Cherny Stav, a mountain lake of extraordinary beauty, and other places in the mountains.
It was Marx who gave us our mental image of a revolutionary: beard, unruly hair, untidy dress, untidy eating. Lenin was neat, well-groomed, conservative. One thinks of a chartered accountant.
The revolutionary fire was in the intensity of his purpose and in his speech. Once, some 15 years or so ago, I was visited in Cambridge by a Soviet historian, an old man who had served in Boudin's cavalry in the Revolution, who had known Lenin. Lenin, to his great delight, had once told him that he was the only known case on record of a cavalryman with brains. I asked him if he would describe the revolutionary leaders as he remembered them, as he had seen them, and he smiled and said, "Well, when Trotsky spoke, we were entranced, but when Lenin spoke, we marched." Lenin was the disciple of Marx, but not his slave. On important matters, he went beyond the master. In one of his more notable observations on revolution, he said, "The aim is not to achieve indiscriminate unity, but unity for the merciless revolutionary struggle of the proletariats against the ruling class." He was strongly affirmed in this belief